right, I think we're live. John, nice to see you.
Good to see you, and not to see anybody else out there, but I think you're there.
There's a large number of participants, and if we get around to it, I might call out an occasional name, since I think you and I know half these guys. So I want to get into all the really interesting questions around Unity, which, you know, I'm like a Unity fanboy. Other people are Nintendo fanboys, and I'm a Unity fanboy. What can you do? And we want to talk about the future of gaming too, because how can you sit with a guy who's held every good, important job in gaming over the years, including the huge amount of help you gave Oculus before they were acquired. So let's get right into it. If people feel they want to know the fact that you went to UC Berkeley or where you went to high school or whatnot, they can go to LinkedIn. That's why God took LinkedIn public. All right, let's talk about Unity. So I think it's a fabulous company. I think a lot of people know that you are behind something like 75% of all the mobile games made available today. But I don't think most people really know the breadth of Unity, maybe even some of the backstory. And so I think we'd all love to hear a good version of, you know, the summation of Unity.
So a little bit of the backstory is sort of interesting. You know, one is, you know, three brilliant young men with not two nickels to rub between their fingers and thumbs started this company almost 15 years ago in Denmark. And they were brilliant. They were, you know, more than just a little bit idealistic. And that company grew to something that I noticed while it was happening, but didn't fully appreciate. And I came to appreciate it on a late summer day in 2013. I was in Vancouver. They were running an event called Unite, where they bring their developers in to learn about the company, listen to the speakers, you know, the kinds of things that, you know, Salesforce does, but on a smaller scale. And I sat through a day and a half of presentations, some technical, some not. And I've seen in my life nothing like this before. They applauded the speakers or reacted to the speakers. People held lighters up. I'm not joking. I felt like I was at a rock concert. I've been to lots of concerts. I'd never been, not quite old enough, I guess, to have been to a Grateful Dead concert, but it felt like that. And I couldn't resist. And I worked the room a little bit. I walked around and I spoke to a bunch of the developers that were there, and they were proud to show me tattoos on their body of the Unity logo. And I thought, this is something different. I didn't have a clue. And really what it was a lot of people that said to me, look, I would have been a waiter if I wasn't a game developer. I was an executive, but I wanted to be a game developer. You know, I was a physicist, but I wanted to be a game developer. I didn't know how to make games. I'm just here because I want to figure out how to make games. And then I started using Unity, and I made a short, you know, 2D FPS. And to a person, they were there because we didn't find our piece of their bank account, although in some cases we did. We found a piece of their heart, their motivation, and their dream. And they all credited Unity with being that point in their lives that brought it all together. That was, I can do this. I can go from consuming technology to creating technology. And I thought, what a privilege it was to hang out with a bunch of people that were so excited about life because of a particular company. Now, at that point, I didn't own any shares in the company. I'd only met David once, the then CEO. And we were a really small company, but we were satisfying the dreams of a huge number of people in a sort of non-for-profit way. Now, we still got a lot of that same mentality. But if you fast forward to today, you know, we've grown a lot. And, you know, back then there was probably, I don't know, 1 million or 2, maybe 5 or 10, depending on what game it was, games being downloaded every month built in Unity. We've invested a lot. I mean, a great deal. Our engineering team is 50 times larger, and we satisfy a lot more use cases. And today, you know, that number of 1 million or 10, whatever it happened to be, is invariably over 3 billion each month. So more than 3 billion times a month, you know, people download games. And, you know, a big part of Unity is what we call Create Solutions, or our creative platform, where people in games, but people well outside of games, and aerospace and autonomous driving, and architecture, engineering, construction. They use Unity for real-time 3D. And as you mentioned, we have a very strong position in mobile. It's not quite 75%, but it's well north of half. And that's really astonishing because other tools are lucky if they have 1% share. And so it's a very sizable business. It's a SaaS business, looks like Adobe or an Autodesk. But what it's really about is a couple thousand engineers waking up every day and saying, what do these developers need and how do we solve their problems the best way? Now, there's another chapter to Unity. The output of a typical content creation tool is like a JPEG. It doesn't move, it's just there. It doesn't require any interaction. It doesn't need to live anywhere like on the cloud, although it can. The output of real-time 3D is an application, which needs to be hosted, needs to be operated, needs to monetize because it costs money to operate it. And so we realized that there was a big gap in the market. I came from big gaming and we knew how to do a lot of those things, but the little guys didn't know how to do a lot of those things. And so we set out to build services around analytics, monetization, cloud backend, and other things, voice we acquired, to provide a suite of services for customers that they really need to operate and maintain their products in the cloud. And we've done that. And that's also a very big part of our company. So if you want to understand Unity, we're about, create solutions, and I say solutions because there's a lot more than one now, and operate solutions, and there's also a lot more than one. And they both work in harmony to make a game developer's life easier and better and usually more successful.
I mean, I've heard that you guys are being used by advertising agencies to make either early versions of TV ads or final versions of TV ads. I hear the filmmakers have been using you to kind of, pre-make their movies. It seems like anybody who touches a computer to make anything might use Unity one day.
Well, look, I think yes, true. And I think there's really kind of 2 points to this one. So yeah, the people, that made the Lion King movie or Baymax, the television show, or, people would design, stadiums from all over the country. And there's all sorts of people. I mean, the Large Hadron Collider, the Jet Propulsion Lab, Gensler, the architects. I mean, I can go on for a long list of retailers that use us. And I saw a really neat demo and use of Unity up in Canada. It's a retailer I didn't know called MEC, but it's a lot like REI down in the States. And apparently they've got like hundreds and hundreds of tents, and they can't build all the tents, so people don't know which one to buy. So they scanned them all into Unity, so then they can take a tablet and be inside or outside of the tent and exactly lay down and see if their head goes through the collision plane. So they can just feel what it's like. Because, I mean, what retailer is going to build 500 tents and put them on the floor? They run out of space. I mean, some of the use cases are truly amazing. The Large Hadron Collider, 10 to the 38 particles bouncing off each other, slowed down quite a lot so they can be viewed, and enlarged quite a lot so they can be seen. But it's amazing to look at. And I'm surprised every day. I mean, BMW sent a ray tracing commercial or short film that they did on BMW that was done in Unity to Car and Driver. And they did the same scene with a car and without a car. And they had the editors vote and some of their people online vote as to which was the rendered car versus the real car. And they couldn't tell. And, I just love all of the crazy stories that people bring about, in using Unity for content creation. So that's today. Here's what I believe, though. I think the game industry got here first. We invented real-time 3D, pretty much in the 90s. And we became the world's best technologists because we squeezed more out of a GPU and CPU than anybody ever could. We pressed computers harder than any other, consumer or really business application, up until AI, I guess. And that enormous engineering and product creativity that the game industry has really held on to for this many years. First, we've created the biggest and fastest growing form of media in the world. I remember when we looked at the music industry and they were big and we were little. Then we looked at the film, the box office, they were big and we were little. And now they both look at us and say they're little and we're big. So we did something right. But it doesn't really matter now. If you're in content creation, whether it's film, television, or you're thinking about sports broadcast, or you're thinking about all sorts of different things like content creation for architecture or running a factory. And people are using us all over China for visualizing their factory lines using, so IoT data to see how it's working in real time. The Hong Kong airport runs itself on Unity that way. And so we're starting to see people realizing what science fiction talked about when we were kids. And they're building on those ideas and things that we never saw possible. And it's amazing to be in the center of that tornado.
Well, you do a great job of explaining the current and future Unity. And I think a lot of people, I've had a chance to look through our couple hundred participants here and got a lot of old guys from gaming. So I'm glad that, that you could update everybody onto Unity. I want to ask you how you found that voice company.
Thank you for that introduction, by the way, Mike. Hey, everyone, just if anybody needs like the guy that knows everybody, he's right there. Happy to connect you to the next opportunity.
Okay. Maybe the better story is that when Vivox was down, I was still their friend. And I'm glad to know that they're doing a good job for you guys. So I think it has to be asked, and every company's got a different story. How are you guys dealing with COVID? You're a big international organization. And take us through a little bit of how you dealt with it. Were you guys a little ahead of the curve?
Well, I mean, yes, I think we were. But, this is such a challenging subject. What we did is, we were already a very decentralized organization. So moving to home and Zoom, and our world is technology. And technology creators are often not disadvantaged in this environment. And the vast majority of people at Unity are fine. We spend 8 and 10 hours a day on Zoom or coding or using tools from Atlassian for connecting our people, or GitHub, or a collection of things this is naturally in our strike zone. And it's naturally in the strike zone of our customers. Now, there are some where they've been more challenged, but for the most part, this has not been as challenging for us generally. But and if you're executives out there, I have one small bit of advice. We spend a lot of time massively over communicating, Zoom meetings morning and night, so we catch Asia in the US. We do online cooking classes. We do collective, little mini hack weeks. We do things that make a typical, Bravo TV channel look boring on our Zoom connection. It's a broadcast 24/7. But even in our company, we have situations where we have an engineer in Bellevue whose spouse is a frontline medical person dealing with COVID with 3 toddlers behind him in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I've spoken to people in that situation. I've spoken to people that are experiencing the virus. I've spoken to some that thought they were going to die. And in every company, and ours included, we're so blessed. My daughter was fired from 3 jobs. Nobody was fired from any jobs, but their spouses were. And in your company, if you haven't found it, there is pain, and the pain needs to be addressed and heard. Most of us on this call work in an industry where we're largely, to the degree possible, not touched, or some of us mildly benefited. And we should thank the stars for being lucky in this situation. If we were hit by like a neutron star comet or whatever, they put out the networks, we'd all be hosed, and the restaurants would be nailing it, because we couldn't play games, we'd be going for food and drink, and the other industries would have been, we happen to have been hit by the first collective global disaster that is probably going to get made into a movie where the reality was worse than the movie since World War II. And we are on the lucky end of it. But trust me, in your organizations, there are people who are not. And of course, I know we all know that most of the world is not, and we should do what we can.
Well, I don't think that could be better said. You have the luxury as a private company right now not having to be asked the question every public company is being asked, which is, are you going to change next quarter? Are you going to change the second half? What's
I'm removing guidance.
2011.
I'm canceling guidance.
You're canceling your private secret guidance.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I realize. Yeah, it's fun to be private.
I mean, but in general, your sort of business would not expect your interruption is your ability to meet with your developers, to develop new relationships. the day-to-day value you provide is still going full force, isn't it?
You know, I would say that generally speaking, we got one of those stories that he went that way because we have cloud services. One of our businesses, advertising, brand advertising is tough right now. Performance advertising is strong right now. On balance, we're stronger than we were because of this, but we're not such a pure play on sort of, if all we provided was cloud services for online multiplayer games, we'd be up dramatically. But we have a variety of businesses that fit under the headline of Unity, and we're doing fine. And I'm thankful that we engineered a company that's that way, and I'm thankful for the luck of being in that company.
Yeah, and I think, Julie was on earlier, and of course, a number of us have had the chance to know her since she pretty much invented advertising in games. And this is going to be a gigantic market. I mean, as I talk to advertisers, they want 10 times more ads available to them. So more hit games, and I'm sure your advertising business can be super strong as it has been up until this. Talk to me a little bit about bigger visionary plans out into the future. When you're asked to talk about 5 and 10 years from now, do you talk about VR? Do you talk about AI? Do you talk about Unity and operating system of robots? What's the bigger, slightly cutting edge Jetsons vision?
Well, I think there's a lot of them, but I'll give you a handful of things that I know are going to happen in the next 24 to 36 months, or even 5 and 10 years if you want to. We're not that far away from putting your football game, basketball game, soccer game on your dining room table. You can sit around and watch it, pause it, make it bigger, affix the camera to LeBron James's eyeglasses or to the ball or to the hoop. And, of course, the sports industry has been long challenged by the fact they can't get younger people that are otherwise obsessed with TikTok to watch their sports programming, because the other stuff's more engaging than, the television broadcast for sports. It was invented in the 1950s. And, drawing a line on the 30-yard line or highlighting the puck isn't enough to engage people that are used to more stimuli. And we think we can, we have a role to play in changing that in pretty dramatic ways. Anybody that now starts with world building and produces a film or a movie, if they want to, they can pause that movie. Your audience can enter that movie. They can interact with each other while they're watching Robert De Niro if they want to, and the movie can go forward or not. And if they bothered with a reasonable quality level of world creation, there's traffic in the streets and customers in the stores. And so you ask yourself, is that the way people want to consume television? They can put the camera anywhere, they can go anywhere, they can enter with their Oculus Quest or with their iPad Pro or whatever it is they want to use. And the answer to the question is, I don't know that everyone wants to, but I can assure you that if it's possible and you're not doing it and someone else is, you lose. And so I am very certain that level of exploration is going to happen. And, one of the things the film industry, talks a lot about by way of example is the value of their library. But realistically, you watch a film once through other than Blade Runner, I've not watched any movies more than 30 times. And all the director's cuts are amazing, by the way. But the point that I would make is that there's innovation there. But, we're definitely going to see things like, scalpels with 2 cameras on them so a surgeon can see things in 3D and more safely, operate on your shoulder, your pancreas, whatever else that needs help. And, I think that the content creators are going to create some benefits for, I've got Escher behind me, but, we can live in whatever we want to live in and visualize whatever we want to visualize. But, where the Oakland Raiders play, or the Warriors used to play, in Oakland. One of our professional services guys took the entire inside of the stadium, re-rendered it inside of Unity. And what's cool about that is now they're able to train their people when there's a concert for the event that will take place the next day, because what they see is the stadium. It's real. It's right in front of them, and they can figure out their emergency procedures and things. Here's my point. If you work in the game industry, and I said this 2 years ago at a Unite event in Copenhagen, and I'll say it again now, if you're a creator in this world, what's really neat is we thought about passing other media. We thought about maybe catching up with some of the more famous media. Guess what? We're going to swallow them all. Everything is going to be, not everything. I don't think you're going to shop for books in real-time 3D, but you're going to shop for your next sweater, because with a quick scan of your body, I can put that on you and you can see how it drapes. And the huge portion of the stuff that goes back and forth in the mail won't have to go back and forth because you'll know it fits. And I can't give you enough examples of where this is going. And then the area I'm most excited about is, a lot of people talk about the metaverse, when they think like this, everyone's read, Neil Stephenson, or read once the Oasis, and, they read, Ready Player One. I firmly do not believe that will ever be a thing, because it's already here. My life is like this. I'm talking to someone I'm having a one-on-one in a very private room, witnessed by many. I dive into a game and I'm in another world, and that other world is daisy chained to yet another world and another game that I'm playing, and yet another world and game that I'm playing. And we're just now connecting the dots to realize that which we keep looking for, that we say is going to be here tomorrow, is here already. And we're just decorating the rooms now. And when we get around to finish decorating the rooms, it'll be the game industry that invented the world.
So building from there, give us your multi-year analysis of where high-end VR content and devices are going. I know you've watched the space super closely since the earliest days of Oculus.
So you might remember, Mike, but about 4 years ago, I put up a presentation called The Gap of Disappointment. And what that was is that industry analysts had forecast like this staggering $100 billion content business for VR here by 2020. And I wrote instead of that curve, I wrote one like this and said, it's not going to happen. And I gave the reasons why. The hardware wasn't ready, the software wasn't ready, the price point wasn't right, a whole bunch of issues. But I then and today still have an enormous amount of faith in AR, VR, XR. And it was because I could see what was possible, just not what was then ready. And anybody that's experienced today, even current devices like HoloLens, HoloLens 2, Quest, there are some staggeringly cool things there. And right now, I think what we're looking for is a consumer killer app. And as with most things, what people get to when they start to imagine is they say, well, wouldn't GTA be amazing here? Most popular game in the history of whatever history we have in terms of console. And it might, but usually new hardware ends up being driven by applications that weren't possible on the old hardware, weren't possible on the old device. And I think we can all imagine what they'll be. I think that, right now we're seeing really good commercial traction with AR. We're seeing solid commercial traction, particularly around training with VR. And I think we're going to start to see, but if you've got an iPad Pro, take out the measure thing. It's amazing. You can measure a room in a matter of seconds because you got LiDAR and all the additional capability. And you could adjust your house in a matter of minutes. Now, I don't think anybody's done much with that, but I'm waiting for the consumer applications that change it. I'm not yet at the point where I'm wearing glasses, but here's my belief. 5 years ago, I said that it was going to be the gap of disappointment. I'd reframe that presentation to be the gap of opportunity. And I think the next 5 years is going to turn into essentially what we thought the last 5 years was going to be.
I know that over the years, the one thing that comes out of every consumer research project when they've tried this stuff is, wow, that's amazing. They don't like the device, they don't like the content, there isn't the killer app, but I don't know anybody who's really walked away saying, boring.
No, I think it's amazing, but look, here's what a market needs for success. And it's interesting. I don't think many of the early participants in AR had the history. Think about what Microsoft does with Xbox, what Sony does with PlayStation, what Nintendo does with their various devices over the years, handheld and console. They came out with a consumer-ready device that was pretty hard to screw up. You plug it in and it worked. It didn't require 20, 30, 40 minutes to set up. It was typically priced under $500 all in, and it was a fully workable device. It came with controllers and it came with the stuff that you needed. There was a market seeded for content that was rich and broad and diverse. And so it was simple, it was price benefit, it was price reasonable, and had a diverse set of experiences. And it wasn't a beta product. It wasn't on its way to being the next thing. It wasn't like, I see the promise of what might be a little bit better. It was good when you got it. And consumer hardware and the ecosystem around consumer hardware doesn't work well with a beta sticker on it. And for the most part, with the rarest of exceptions, and you'd have to argue that we're starting to see these exceptions now, most everything that's been out there has been more of a beta than it's been a final product. And it didn't have a content ecosystem. Those will come.
I agree with you. Oh, we have 2 questions lined up. We are going to take questions. By the way, lesser people will not take questions from the audience, but John has no fear.
Maybe I do.
You'd be surprised how many people say to me, no questions from the audience. So please put your questions in the Q&A box. That would be awesome. So John, I think of you guys as kind of the sophisticated, advanced version of what's being called the creator economy today. And Roblox and Congregate and BuildBox, I think, are all held out, app on board BuildBox, as examples of, you don't need to go to coding camp. Any kid can code. Your company is making it possible for any developer to do a much larger amount of work than they could. Do you see yourself in the creator economy, and where do you see this mass creator economy going that some people are talking about?
So Unity was in the creator economy before I got here, right? All those people with tattoos in Seattle that day were already singing Unity's praises for this. So at least in gaming, we're as close to having invented it as you can get. And I'm familiar with, Manticore and, BuildBox and others that are low code, no code. And I think there's something there. My personal belief is, and we talk a lot about this at Unity, and it's our mission statement. In fact, it is in fact our mission statement that we believe is a better place with more creators in it. We don't discount the value of consumers, but there is something absolutely magical to be part of something where you're creating technology and not just consuming it. And when my kids were in middle school and high school, I was often the parent on the technology committee, and they were like, technology means we're going to teach them to use PowerPoint and Excel. I said, no, teach them to create. Let's teach them HTML and teach them make a website, or, I helped them use, Flash back then to, make some games, teach the kids how to do it. I think there's nothing in the world as satisfying as creation. And there's nothing more crushing than finding your creation not well appreciated. But, Teddy Roosevelt wrote a lot about the person in the ring taking the chance to create. I think the more people in the world that taste that, the better. Now, I think there's a fair debate about what actually is going to happen in a creator economy. So let's take painting. Anybody can buy, an easel, a canvas, a paintbrush, and some colors to dip it in. That doesn't make you an artist. And in fact, having grown up with a couple of kids bringing up, Daddy, I'm an artist, it wasn't true. Weirdly enough, with both my daughters, it is true now. But I don't think the question is, how do we lower the bar so anyone can create? Is how do we put a step down so anybody can create well? And I think most of what I've seen in the low code, no code isn't beginning to ask the right question. Not this is the answer to anybody can create. The better question is, what can I do to help people create well, find an audience, and actually get their leg into the space to be successful at it? And right now, there's about 1 million people around the world that use Unity that meet that definition. And I want that to be 50 million, 100 million, 1 billion. And I think, that's possible. I think that's inevitable if we do our jobs right. But I don't think it's going to come because we made it so easy that anyone can do it. The so easy that anyone can do it somehow seems to fly directly counter to doing it well. Doing it well, something that's good enough for someone else to want to play your creation, that's a really cool place to be, and we want to facilitate that.
That's a very, I've thought a lot about the creator economy, and I'm glad you just said what you said, because I hadn't thought of it that way, and I think that's important. I'm just so amazed that some 12-year-old can sit down and make a game that I can't beat. Yeah.
Hey, our thumbs were faster when we were 12.
Yeah, that's, the longevity of an esports professional is lower than an NFL player. Hey, John, you got any prediction on live sports? As long as we're having a nice chat here, we're gonna for those of us invested in live sports companies.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's really going to happen to live sports, but look, I mean, my guess is it'll be different around the world. Look, I was part of the earliest era, not the very earliest era of Madden Bowl and online gaming. And one thing that's been really interesting to watch back then was watching how excited the fans got watching their favorite players play Madden. And so, I don't want to replace this year's, NBA season and this fall's football season with a bunch of, 6'7" players with their thumbs wearing out over a console, but it may be what we're stuck with. I'm not sure that'll satisfy the fans that really want to see it come back together. So I'm not an epidemiologist. I've got my views on what should be happening. No one wants to hear them. Everyone's got their views on what should happen, so I'll leave that part out.
My friend Josh Gutfriend put a question in, but I think he put it in the chat. So please try to put him in the Q&A area. Well, I think that was a tiptoe into a path we should walk down for at least a few minutes, John, which is esports. I mean, you've watched it from the very beginning in Asia, and would love just your overall opinion about where the industry is going, and is anybody going to make any money other than the publishers?
Yes and no.
I'm afraid no is to the second part of my question.
Yeah. So let me give you my point of view. So I've spent a lot of time in the game industry, and so it's an industry I know pretty well. I'm sure there are listeners here that know it better than I do, but I've certainly been around it long enough to have a reasonable perspective. I also have the benefit of having been the CEO of Wilson Sporting Goods and doing deals, with predecessors of all the current commissioners around balls and pucks and cleats and jerseys. And so I got to see that world too, the if you will, the real sports world. And I'm not discounting the fact that, video game players are every bit as talented. So that's not the point I'm making when I say real. It's been on grass versus on a computer, or on a hardwood versus on a computer. And I would say that there's some fundamental structural differences between a professional sports league and a video game sports league. One of them is that the professional sports league operate under competition laws that protect them from monopolistic behavior prosecutions from the government. So they're in competition, but they're allowed to collaborate and cooperate in ways that normal businesses are not. They're essentially groups of people that do things that other companies wouldn't be allowed to do if they were collaborating with each other under the legal guidance of either Europe or North America or most parts of Asia. And that creates a certain set of expectations and a certain set of norms. But if the NFL was owned by Nike, like owned by Nike, what would an owner do? I mean, precisely. I guess they'd work for the vice president of marketing. They wouldn't have their own plane, or maybe Nike would be successful enough for them to have their own plane, but I don't think they'd have their own plane, and they wouldn't have their own nightclub, and they wouldn't have their own everything. They'd be employees. And so what I'm trying to tell you is I think that the economic realities of esports are very likely in time to be a little bit different. And I think the publishers are in a lot more control than the individual participants are in the real sports world. So the Activisions and the Riots and others in Valve and EA and Tencent. They're going to do really well there. They own intellectual property, and they're going to, use it effectively to create market economies around their games. And players and aggregations of players, they've got everything that they've got in the sports world. If they're better than the next person and they're going to be in high demand, they're going to command high wages if an audience wants to watch them. And so I'm not saying that esports isn't going to be successful. It already is, and it's going to get more successful. I just think what I hear too often is stretched analogies to professional sports leagues. And I think that's not the easiest way to think about it, or at least that won't be the most profitable way to think about it if you're putting your money up at risk.
So we got so many good things I could still ask you about, and we've got the Q&A filling up. And I might say there's some great psychological interpretation I could lend to the Q&A. We may even go to it, John. I don't know if you're able to see it too. You want to give us any?
What about our chat? Where should I be? Oh, here's the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm going to walk us all through because I've examined it. But you want to say anything short on next gen console? Got any? Who's coming out first? Who's got the lower price?
No, I've got such
haven't signed any
in the console industry. I'd let them speak for themselves. Here's what I would say. The news of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, and that's not the exact quote or even who said it, but I'm almost bored of waiting for people to tell me how the console business isn't going to be good. The console business, punctuated by 4 and 5, 6, 7, sometimes year waves where they bring out new hardware. The people that at Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo do the world an enormous favor. They built an ecosystem that spawned a global empire and made room for all of our careers. Mobile gaming wouldn't have arisen had that not been there first. PC gaming probably would have, but smaller. The point is that I think that the amount of energy that goes into innovating hardware, and I know the very specifics of the hardware innovation that are out there, we work closely with them, it's impressive as all hell. And so I think we're going to be surprised, and as normal, we're going to see wicked cool demos that really aren't that different, a little graphically better than what we saw. And it'll take a year or two for people to really figure out that I can do that. And that will be something that changes, everything about the way we understand gaming. I can remember calling Sam Hauser the first time I was at Electronic Arts back then, and I played GTA, and I was like, I'd never played an open world game before. And I was dumbfounded. And, I called him up and told him I thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. And sometime later, we went and had Indian food in Manhattan. And I was a fanboy. It's weird to be a fanboy for the developer for a competing company, especially when you're the president of the video game company when you're calling. But I couldn't not stop. And that was enabled by, some work that some really clever engineers did on GPUs and hardware that it wouldn't have been possible without. And so, my point is that there's a collection of hardware engineers and business people that design these platforms that contain our dreams and allow us to find the nooks and crannies of innovation that'll allow us to feel like we're true innovators and creators. And so we tend not to think about them. But, and no one writes Cerny on the side of a PlayStation, but maybe they ought to.
Maybe they should indeed. Yeah, when the console goes away, it's only going to give us a chip or a stick, like a Roku. Yeah, we've had that one dying for a long time. Okay, John, I'm just going to go with this, and you and I are buds. Let's have some fun with these questions. I might even give particularly anybody. So some of these are a little hostile, John. Not super hostile.
Hostile in what way? I don't see anything hostile.
Well, this one's not super hostile, but it's mildly hostile. But I love the fact that it was anonymous. So this is pretty hostile. By the way, I just want to say for the record, for my personal opinion, if you're going to ask a question like,
look, let me take the anonymous hostile one.
The long one.
Yeah, let me paraphrase it for everybody.
Put your name up.
Don't put your name up. I'm happy to answer it. So, anonymous attendee is asking about essentially the miserable working conditions and long working conditions in gaming, exhaustion and overexhaustion. I think that's worth talking to. I've run game studios when that's happened. So I know about that, and it's hard. Let me tell you something that I think most people don't know. More than half the time, I'd say maybe more than 80% of the time. Those hostile work conditions are not a result of some evil management team lording over this team and telling him to work hard. You know what it comes from? It comes from perfectionists on the team that don't want to ship something that's anything short of the most brilliant thing they can possibly put on the market. And they're motivated by the desire to delight a user. And they know there's a deadline and they're going to throw everything they can at it because they're proud of their work. They love their work. And they want to be better than anyone can imagine. They're driven by their own personal demons, their own ambitions, and a love for the art. Now, there are cases where people are exploited, and I hate that. When I was, running a game studio, Redwood Shore Studio for a while at EA, and I was directly supervising games, I made it that I never walked out of the building before the last person walked out. I'm typically 185 pounds. I got to like 220 on Cheetos and pizza. It was, do not look at photos of me from that time frame. It's not pretty. And I had like orange tinge on the side of my mouth with the rest of my team. And I guarantee you, I wasn't asking them to do that. They were doing it for the love of the game. I know that's not all cases. And I implore any management team to never push a team through that. I know I've done it too. It's not good. And what I would actually suggest is everyone have a great conversation about what we need. For the most part, I've watched, bravery from people like Andrew Wilson and Yves Guillemot and Bobby Kotick when they've let their teams push a date out rather than jam to hit the date. And to a person, they've been rewarded by shipping a better product as opposed to a product that's not quite right. When they've made those decisions with courage that there's a bad reaction from Wall Street that lasts 90 days. And there's a good reaction from your customer that lasts for decades. They've all learned that, and they're all doing a really good job at it. So, look, I hate that part of the industry. It's a dark side of the industry. I wish it didn't exist. But for those people that aren't working in the industry or haven't worked on one of those teams, you'd be wrong to think that more times than not that it's coming top down. It's more often than not coming from a group of people that want to be so proud of their work. Remember, the game industry is sort of a weird thing, and I'll give you a sense of the staging. If you're taking a sizable console game, it's probably been in the works for 2.5 years or more. A big PC game from Blizzard, I mean, how many years? You can count it in fractions of a decade. The art that they put through takes time. And you're working in the dark, the lights are dim, you're coding long hours, you do it for 3 years or 2 years, and you've gotten no feedback from the customer. And now you're 3 months from being on the global stage with the lights on your work. And that's both frightening and exciting. And you want people to love your game. And that's actually what drives most of it. And I'm proud to know that I get to work with people like that. Some of their dreams don't come to reality, but those that do change the world. I think it's amazing.
So games as a service is on the side of quality, the ability to continue to improve.
Yep.
While alive. All right, so I'll trade you back and forth, John. You look these over, but let's go with the one I wanted to ask. But it got 2 questions, which a lot of people asked. So people want to know about Unreal 5, and Thomas Lee and I want to know about your IPO.
Well, which one do I get to say no comment to? So, first off, I would say congratulations to Tim. I thought it was a great demo that they showed for Unreal 5. I would be lying to you if I didn't think we had a better plan than that. And we unveiled that in our stages in our way. I think it speaks to a slightly different vision. But, Tim's got a strong vision and a product, worthy. And, my view is that we have you'd think I'd think this, but we have a stronger vision. And that's been borne out, I think, when it comes to the game engine side of things. We've grown and gained market share, so strongly over the last several years. And, what's neat now is, 5 years ago, we were never in the hunt when somebody was looking to make a complicated mobile game. We were the low end of mobile. Then we got the mid-end of mobile, the high-end of mobile. Almost anybody that's looking at third-party tech for a AAA game, we're in the hunt now. And there's a reason, is because we got all the pieces and all the dogs and all the plans, and we're executing well. So congratulations to, the folks at Unreal. It's a great demo. There's a lot to like in what we saw. And watch this space. We show up with our own demos every couple of months, and the next ones are going to dazzle you too. You have choice. I think there's an obvious better choice, and I'm glad to say that most of you have made that choice. So that makes me happy. When will Unity IPO? When we're good and ready. Look, I can't talk about that because it's one of those dumb things. If I had a plan, I can't tell you about it. And I'd be screwing with you to tell you if I didn't have a plan that I'm baking. And it's like there's no answer to that answer. What I can say is that we're a very happy private company doing well with investors that like us and customers that like us, and we're working to keep all of those things true. In companies that go public, and I've run public companies before, it's just a day in the life. It doesn't change anything. We're here with the vision and the mission that the world's a better place with more creators in it. We love competition, bring it on. That makes us better too, for our customers. And we're going to continue pursuing that mission.
All right. Couple of different questions, including from our friend David Bloom, from a couple of different people about Apple Glass. Have you used it? Do you have much of a point of view on it?
It's interesting. This from Apple, there are only two categories: people that are saying what they don't know anything about, or people that know that can't say anything about what they do know about, which leaves me precisely nowhere to go, because I'm either going to bloviate or break an NDA. And, I've probably done both in my life, but I'm going to do neither today.
It's a good line. Here's a great question for our quite large audience that's amassed today. Indie developers. Let's say I'm an indie developer. What do I do? Do I walk into your office on 3rd Street and sign in? Do I go to info@unity.com? I'm an indie developer. How does Unity help me?
So, first off, if you're an indie developer, by and large, all you need is Unity, talent, and pizza, and you've got a business. So you can download Unity online. If you don't have any funding, it's free, or less than 100,000 in funding, it's free. You can build your game. We'll facilitate you deploying it to the various, app stores around the world, including ones that we directly facilitate. And we provide you the tools for user acquisition. We provide you the tools for voice. We provide you social tools. We can, if it's a cloud-based game or one that needs significant back end, we can directly do that. And you literally, other than pizza for nourishment, so you can still type on your keyboard or draw for your art, you don't need anything. And so we can do all of it. Now, of course, you do need something. You probably need a computer, and you need maybe a Maya license and a few other things. But, frankly, if you're an indie developer, go to unity.com and download, unity3d.com, excuse me, and download Personal Edition Plus or Pro, depending on the size of your business, and you're off to the races. And with the forums and the content that you can find in and around Unity on our website and our store, you'll find everything you need to go from first line of code to successful revenue generating product.
Okay, what else do we have on here? What else are these? I loved this one, John. What's your perspective from Craig Amazon? What's your perspective on quantum computing? Is Unity using or analyzing quantum computing, and how will it impact us? When could it hit critical mass?
So I'm going to answer that by almost not answering it. So I've read and had so many conversations about quantum computing, about whether it's real or not real, whether it's in terms of when it's likely to have an impact on our world. And nothing I've seen suggests that it's likely to have an impact on the world of game creation in the very near term. But there is actually something that I think is just as interesting a question. I apologize if I'm skirting and jumping. But what we're doing with AI at Unity is amazing. And it's at the earliest stages, but it's genuinely helping our customers monetize and deepen the engagement and the retention of their customers. So at that level, we've got a beat on well north of 2 billion devices. We understand a lot about user behavior, and using the data together with AI is really helping our customers on monetization and on engagement and on and extending the period of time their customers stay with them. And then the simulation tools we're providing can show you how your game is going to simulate before, how they're going to monetize, and you can start to do testing of, features, et cetera. So that's one world, is it can take what you've already created and A/B test and do things to make it better and be more successful. We're also using AI in the early stages for content creation. And, big games get to be so big and unwieldy, and we're going to be, going deep there. And the reason I bring up AI in this context, and you can take a look at Art Engine if you want to see some of that recent acquisition, brilliant group of people in Ireland, Artomatics, is that I think that while the promise of ever faster compute is interesting, I think for our industry, the use of data is probably more important around training algorithms to help us design and build better things. And that's probably the bigger tsunami on the horizon in terms of its impact in our industry.
One question that I wanted to insert that I'm surprised didn't come up is kind of your handicapping of the current cloud gaming initiatives and what you see even beyond this current group of competitors.
So I find the notion of cloud gaming amusing. And let me explain what I mean. So the biggest cloud entertainment company in the world is Netflix. And I think most people still don't know that they use streaming to get the product to their television. They just have Netflix. They have no idea where it comes from. Most people don't know how their set-top box works. Set-top box is a pretty sophisticated piece of technology, the way it draws content from all sorts of different sources around your permissions. But I don't think they care if it's streamed. I mean, you can tell if you go to a bar and say an NFL game is being shown about ESPN and ABC, the ABC signals are just a tad, if it's broadcast, a tad faster, because it's not being buffered. But I've never woken up and said to myself, I want to consume a stream game. I want to play GTA. I want to play Madden. I want to play FIFA. I want to play Words with Friends. I want to play, Candy Crush. I want to play Honor of Kings. I want to play, Bejeweled. I want to play something. And for certain use cases, streaming is a great way to get it. For other use cases, it's not the best way to get it. And there's nothing about current technology to suggest that we need to choose a religion about how our content is delivered to us. My sense is in days in the future, the most successful services will use a combination of streaming, downloading clients for local play, and then matchmaking behind it, and a series of optimally structured games that live somewhere in a client server world where it's half and half, because it's just a more efficient way to do it. If you take a super light game that you could download virtually for free, and you live in a world where it costs money to stream, why would you pay to stream something if you're going to play it a lot when it's free to play on your local computer, your local tablet, your local phone? Why would you tie up a network for that? Why would you use your data for that? On the other hand, if a game gets to be too big to be contained on a console or a PC, and you've got a lot of cloud interaction with a large audience of people, some portion of that game is going to have to live in the cloud. But there's no reason why all the compute needs to be on the cloud. And so I think where we sort of miss this a little bit is in thinking the question is about picking our religion of which technology we want to employ, when we ought to be thinking, what content I want to employ, then how do I deliver that content and that solution best to the user? And I do think in time, networks getting better and all the investments that the mega caps are making in cloud back end, more and more of that's going to be in the cloud, but it won't be an exclusive choice. I still think you're going to have a GPU in your living room for quite a while. Mike?
Did we lose Mike here? Did he freeze up?
Mike seems to have frozen up. Hey, Ned.
Hey, John, fantastic discussion. Listen, we are getting towards the end of the session here. I wanted to hear Mike's last word with you, but maybe I'll just pose it to you. Do you have a last word for folks, John, before we wrap up here today?
You know, nothing other than this. If you're working in this industry, and you probably are if you're listening to this, you're lucky. I feel lucky. All the investments that are coming from the mega caps, from Tencent to Google, Apple to Microsoft, Sony, and the other console companies, are creating a market environment for growth. There's this combination of streaming versus client server versus local client, and the blends in and around that are going to create more capability for an enormous amount of innovation. AR, VR is real and it's coming. AI is real and it's going to make a difference. I can't think of a more dynamic time in the industry that's even close to as interesting as this time. And, you know, I feel like this is the most important place to be in technology and the most important place to be in entertainment, both at the same time. And I'm just glad that Unity can play a part in that. So thanks all for listening. I see a lot of questions, but I know we're wrapped up, so I won't try to answer all of them.
Well, thank you for sharing all your insights and your time with us today. We really appreciate it, and hope to have you back on the show again soon. Take care.
Right. Thanks, Ned. And Mike, stay frozen. You look good that way.
Well, technology does fail on occasion.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Technology does fail on occasion. I thought this was great. We got some great questions. Ned?
Yeah, we just I filled in for you, and we did the final question, Mike. Really appreciate it, Mike. You had a great conversation, and folks, this is just day one of our 3-day conference. So a lot of these themes that John and Mike touched on, we'll dive in deeper tomorrow. So we'll be back at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Have fun.
Yep.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, John.